Getting all the plant-based B12 you need is really, really easy, and the consequences for not getting it are catastrophic. So today I really want to share with you how to get all the plant-based B12 that you need, and this is part of my series on vital vegan nutrients that you need to know about. 50 to 60% of vegans do not get their plant-based B12. So this is a crucial issue, and it's so important for me to talk about this. Now, the information on B12 is intense, and let me tell you, I read like 90 pages on this for you. I was enjoying it because I am a bit of a nutrition nerd, but if you want to get all the full information on B12, make sure you check out my blog post, and I'm going to link it up here and in the description. And of course, it's not 90 pages, it's a summary about plant-based B12 and B12 deficiency, so make sure to check it out. B12 is not made by animals or plants, so it's really not a vegan issue. B12 is actually made by bacteria in the soil. So in the past, people would easily get it. But today, because we chlorinate the water supply, which is a good thing so that we don't get a lot of different diseases, there's no more B12 or very little left. It actually can take many years for a B12 deficiency to develop, especially if you're new to the plant-based lifestyle. However, the results for this are really, really devastating. Things like paralysis, psychosis, and even death. And there have been cases of this in vegans. And it's really, really easy to get your B12. So it's really important that you pay really close attention to this information. B12 is an essential nutrient, so that means your body actually does not produce it. You have to get it from an outside source. And it's also a cofactor to many different reactions in your body, so that's why it has a lot of different functions, and I've detailed all of them in the blog post. I won't go into it now, but that is why a deficiency can cause such horrible consequences for many different functions and parts of your body. So to prevent and combat B12 deficiency, all you have to do is take 2,500 micrograms of plant-based B12 once a week, or a 250 microgram dose daily. Now make sure that you are getting B12 in cyanocobalamin form, and I will link the blog post where I discuss the supplement that I take. It's a vegan cyanocobalamin, and unfortunately a lot of supplements contain methylcobalamin. I took that for years before learning that it's actually not the right form, because studies have just not found that it absorbs properly in your body so far. That may change, of course, the science is always changing, but just to be safe, because this is such a huge issue, we want to make sure that we take the right form. So, cyanocobalamin. Now, the recommendations that I just shared are actually for adults under 65, but if you're over 65, you want to take a little bit more, 1,000 micrograms every day of cyanocobalamin. You can also get plant-based B12 from fortified plant-based foods. I personally don't recommend this route because a lot of these foods are really processed. So a great example of this is actually nutritional yeast. If you've been following me, you know that I have shared a new brand of nutritional yeast that I personally like lately, and I will link that for you below. It's by Foods Alive, and it is a non-fortified form. And the reason is that a lot of fortified nutritional yeast also includes things like folic acid and other additional synthetic nutrients that you just don't want to take in synthetic form. A lot of nutrients are just really bad for you if you take them synthetically. So that is why I highly recommend supplementing. But on the blog post, I did share exactly the doses every day that you should be getting if you do want to get it from fortified foods instead of a supplement. And a small note on a big topic of homocysteine. So homocysteine is a compound that is elevated when you have B12 deficiency, and we do not want that happening. Elevated homocysteine is associated with things like Alzheimer's and heart disease. And what's really, really interesting that I have read is that elevated homocysteine levels are usually present in omnivores, so people who eat animal products. But in plant-based eaters who are not getting their plant-based B12 in their diet through either supplementation or fortified foods, we see elevated homocysteine levels. So it's almost like you're eating this beautiful, gorgeous, health-promoting diet that is the #1 way to prevent heart disease, and then you don't take your B12 supplement. Such an easy, simple thing to do, and you're basically counteracting all of the benefits of this diet. And they have found that plant-based eaters who just simply start supplementing again with plant-based B12 can increase their levels within just a couple of weeks of B12, and then their homocysteine will go down. So please, 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 do not forget your supplement, and do not think that you can get B12 from food. It turns out it's really, really easy to reverse B12 deficiency in most cases, unless of course you wait way too long, which please don't, because in some cases the damage is actually completely irreversible. But if you are deficient and you find this out, talk with your doctor about dealing with this. And even though a lot of doctors will tell you to get shots or B12 injections, they aren't so great for you. So actually Dr. Greger recommends that we take B12 supplements at a very high dose, and I have detailed all of that in the blog post. So just work with your doctor and see if you can take the supplement instead of the injection. Some people, in super rare cases, I think it's just 1 to 2% maybe, have an issue with absorbing the supplement, either because they are taking other drugs, or they have weak stomach acid, or different things like that. So it's really, really important, again, that you work with your doctor and you figure out how to fix it ASAP. And I read this really long and interesting article about all these different studies that were done on different foods to see if they have B12. And I'm talking about plant-based foods, so plant-based sources of B12. And the issue is that food, parts of it can be contaminated with bacteria that will then produce the B12, but it's only parts of that food, so it's not reliable. We don't know that every single chlorella, for example, which has been found to have some B12 in some cases, will have it. So it's not a reliable source, and it's definitely not something you should rely on still. They are doing studies on this, and again, it might change, but until then, please take your supplements. Mentioning these foods, a lot of different seaweeds actually act as analogs of B12. So they're like false positives. So if you take a blood test, it doesn't control for these. So that means, let's say you eat some seaweed right before, or you just generally eat a lot of seaweed, which is a good thing, which we discuss in our iodine video. Your blood test may show that you have B12 when you actually don't. So the best way to test B12 is actually through MMA, methylmalonic acid, and it can either be a blood test or a urinary test, and that does control for those false positives. But please note that, let's say if you go tomorrow and you get your MMA test and your MMA is low, which is a good thing, you actually want the result to be low, that means you have enough B12. It doesn't mean that in a week or a month you will have still B12 in your body. B12 is a very tricky thing. Your storages can last for years, and then they can just abruptly and suddenly end. So this is why I emphasize, again, please, please take your B12 so that you can actually experience all these beautiful benefits of a plant-based diet and not ruin them by such a tiny, insignificant mistake. Now, there is another option. I know I said supplementation is the only one, but I found out there's another option, and Tomer and I discussed it. And instead of making smoothie bowls, you can make smoothie bowls. And what I mean is, your B12 bacteria and B12 production actually happens in your body. It just happens like way down the colon. So if you know what I mean, the end production of your digestion contains B12. So if you just add that into your smoothie bowl, and instead of a smoothie bowl, you make a smoothie bowl, you will get all the B12 you need. But for those of you who don't want to get B12 through poop, I think I'm one of them for sure. You do want to take your supplements, so just take your supplements, okay? Take your supplements. And make sure to check out the full blog post. You can nerd out on all the B12 information you need, but I promise I did not make it too confusing and complicated. I went through 90 pages of nutrition information and studies and summarized it into a nice little article, which is going to be linked up here and in the description. Don't eat poop, just take a supplement. All right, I will see you next week. I hope this has been helpful. Let me know in the comments if it has. Like this video and please subscribe to my channel for weekly videos. Bye.